Okay, we are going to talk about why the BMW i3 is so cheap. When you want to get started on the content of the title of this video, go ahead and click on the timestamp below. Some of you might be curious as to how I stumbled upon the i3 and how I ultimately purchased it. So that's going to be the intro. Feel free to stick around for that. If you do want to fast forward, just click on the timestamp of the list of why the car is so cheap. So when I was looking for a car, my first car that I came from after this was actually a 2005 Mercedes C230 compressor sedan. And that one, Mercedes actually has the second worst resale value of any luxury vehicle. And at that time, I was looking for some criteria of purchasing a car. I wanted something close to 200 horsepower, something that was under $25,000 used, under 50,000 miles. I wanted a short sedan, 4-door for future kids. And so with that criteria, I only came across 2 cars. And I did consider Hondas and Toyotas, but all of those Japanese brands tend to hold their value very well. So the Mercedes I ended up buying was 2005 that I purchased in 2007. That had 55,000 miles, and I bought that for $17,000. And so I do kind of have an eye for value. And so with the i3, I had originally thought it was all electric. And so when I was researching it, it came upon me that it does have a backup gas tank available, which BMW calls the REX system. And so that made it a big contender for purchasing the i3. And I came across a YouTube video, and I'll put his video below, but the title of his video was why I purchased a BMW i3 over a Tesla Model 3. And so that title really, really intrigued me, and so I clicked on that. In the middle of his video, he says the BMW i3 that he bought, he got for $17,000 US, or $17,000. So I paused for a moment and I was like, what country or what state is that? That's definitely not in California. And so I actually went to my dealership, or I called them on the phone, and I found out that there were cars there for that cheap, anywhere from $14,000 to about $21,000 at that time. And that was 2018. And so this was real and this was legit. And so you're probably seeing the same thing too and wondering why the car is so cheap. So we're gonna go into that right now about why the BMW i3 is so cheap. And so before we talk about that cheapness, we're not talking about just the drop in price from the MSRP, because the MSRP is way exaggerated. No one pays MSRP for this car. What we're talking about is in terms of dollars, because you can buy this car. The best value ones right now are about $21,000 to $21,500, give or take a few thousand. So you can pay as little as $14,000, $16,000, $17,000 for a used i3 that's fairly well equipped. Okay, so why they're so cheap? Number one has to do with the looks. So not everyone's gonna like the contrasted black hood, and not everyone's gonna like the kind of spaceshipy look to it. The looks of the i3 do turn a lot of people off. I personally love it, and some of you who are watching this video may like it. There are people who end up changing the color of the hood, wrapping it, or wrapping the top part so it's all kind of monochrome one color. But for a lot of the parts, people just don't like the look. And so that turns off a huge number of people. Number two has to do with the perception of the size. And so the perception of the size is that it's very, very small. And so my criteria, as I mentioned earlier, is I was looking for a car that was a very small sedan, but easy to park, and then also can fit 2 car seats in the back for my kids. So this does fit 2 car seats, and in there right now is 2 car seats for a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And so they're front facing, and that does work really well. The other reason for low price of this car has to do with the range. Okay, so majority of people who are exposed to EVs, or not exposed to EVs, just majority of society, at least now, doesn't quite understand their needs for range. So the range of this 2016 model and anything before was 72 miles. Yes, 72 miles, which seems very, very low. Majority of us, when we're driving our gas cars, when we see that we only have 72 miles left, that's like time to get more gas. But this is actually the full range of the gas vehicle, 72 miles. When you add the REX, you can add more range to that. but the perception of 72 miles being too low is all too common. And so a lot of people dismiss the BMW i3 because of its low range. So some of you do realize that you're not driving that much. The majority of America doesn't drive more than 50 miles a day. And even in California, people don't drive majority 50 miles a day. For me, myself, I personally drove, before the pandemic, I drove 90 miles a day. So I did have to charge at work. I was able to find charging about 3 days out of the week. And then the other times I would just use the Rex if I needed to. But I'm not majority of the case. Majority of people will be driving fewer miles. And so, again, the reason for the cheapness of the car, number one, is going to be the looks. And number two is the perception of the size. Number three is false perception of people's needs for range. Okay, and then the fourth item has to do with when the car was released. So in 2014, when this car came out in the United States, there weren't very many EVs out there. And so people who would look to only finance a car would look to lease. People who never look to lease would lease the BMW i3. In fact, rumors have it that over 85% of people have leased the BMW i3. And the reason being is that people think that the technology is developing too quickly. And so people don't want to be holding on to a car and purchasing it outright. They wanted to lease. And again, EVs were new and people were a little bit scared. And so the majority of people leasing these cars, 3 years later, all the lease returns come back to the dealers. And that was very overwhelming because that was also the time when people were sitting on their hands waiting for the Tesla Model 3. Yes, the base model, the cheap model. Everyone and their mom had their deposit in for a Tesla Model 3. And so there was perception of need or perception of demand, but no one was putting their money down for an EV because they're all waiting for a car that hadn't come out yet. Meantime, BMW is getting an influx, a huge influx of BMW i3s going back to the dealers. And the dealers do need to get rid of those because the BMW i3, even today, is still in production. And so they need to make space for their current cars. And so what did? They had to reduce the price of these i3s drastically to get them off the lot. And so the timing of that is something that we're not going to see again because EVs aren't going to be new again, or at least not as new as they were back in 2016 or 2014 when this came out. So that, and again the release of the BMW i3, of the Tesla Model 3, which has already since come out, we're not going to see that kind of test of the market again. And so the value of these cars has dropped significantly. So if you're looking at this video or watching this and researching, then you're probably noticing that this is a gem. It's not going to be a car for everyone, but for the people who do recognize that it fits them, this is amazing. I mean, to be able to get the price of this car of $20,000, you're getting a car that is currently cheaper used than a new Honda Civic or a new Jetta. Particularly now with all the shortages of those chips, a lot of dealers, especially Volkswagen and Subaru, have added on dealer markups ranging from $4,000 to $10,000 on top of the MSRP. So buying a new car now it's not a good time to be buying a new car. And the price of the i3 it's dropped so significantly. The best value i3s right now is going to be a 2017 model Rex for about $20,000 to $21,500. Some people will consider getting the 2018 model, which also is a good value. In 2018, they did increase the range or the size of the battery, so there is a significant enough difference where 2018 should be considered, and you also most likely still have your warranty. So go ahead and look at 2017 and 2018 models if you're looking for a very good value i3. And again, I think in recent times the BMW i3 is actually the most best value used car out of all brands. Toyota and Honda, they keep their values so well. And again, back in 2007 when I was looking for a car, and ultimately bought the Mercedes, I did look at other brands. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to go out and go buy a Mercedes. Most people, when they're buying cars, they're going to look at a car that they really like and find some way to justify how it fits into their lives. for me, I kind of do it backwards. I look at the different criteria of what I'm looking for as far as size and horsepower and whether it's electric or not and all that. And the more specific I get with the criteria, the fewer choices that I have. And ultimately, the car kind of picks me. And so, again, the past 3 cars I've had, I've never really thought I'd be getting those cars. I just found criteria that I was looking for and then looked at the market and see what was available, and the car just kind of picked me. So the BMW i3 is certainly a great value. I will have other videos in the future regarding if you're getting a BMW i3 for the first time or strongly considering it. It's going to be a crash course on things you need to know about the car, because it is quite unusual. All right, so hopefully you learned a few things about why the BMW i3 is very, very low priced. And so we'll see you next time. Take care. Hope I answered your questions. If you have any comments, go ahead and leave that below. Thanks. Bye.
Sorry to bug you, bro.
Yeah, no problem.